Hello, my name is Sarah Jones, and this is my presentation for the English 2030 presentation. I chose to discuss the articles about physician-assisted suicide. The article topics. The articles Think Twice About Death with Dignity and My Aunt's Struggle with Physician-Assisted Suicide offer two different points of view on the topic of physician-assisted suicide. Physician-assisted suicide is when a doctor will prescribe a patient with a lethal dose of medicine to end their own life. It is also referred to as, quote, death with dignity, end quote, or, quote, aid in dying. While other countries such as the Netherlands have already allowed euthanasia, which is similar to assisted suicide, for years, in the U.S. only 6 states have legalized assisted suicide. Out of these two articles, one chooses to discuss the topic through a personal experience in favor of assisted suicide, while the other states their opinion and lists reasons and examples as to why they believe assisted suicide should not become legal nationwide. The first article I wrote about was Think Twice About Physician-Assisted Suicide. This article was in negation of legalizing assisted suicide. The author, Ira Bjork, has a firm belief that if America were to legalize assisted suicide, that people would choose death even if they were not fully incapacitated. Meaning that even if they didn't have a lethal disease or fatal disease, they would still choose death even if it were for something similar to blindness. California has already legalized physician-assisted suicide with Bill SB 128, passed on June 16, 2015. Both authors will reference this passing in California. The use of a comparison between assisted suicide and issues such as gay rights provides an easy way to understand the author's introduction to his opinion on the matter. He compares assisted suicide to gay rights in that it's an issue that could easily become debated upon until the point where it's nationally addressed. The author has personal experience as a doctor and says that after 35 years of medical practice, he has never had to, quote, kill a patient to alleviate their suffering, end quote. Stating that his personal medical experience encourages readers to trust his point of view. It also brings light to his experience and knowledge of the topic. At the end of the article, it states that Ira Bjork directs the Institute for Human Caring of Providence Health and Services in Los Angeles. He is also a professor of medicine at Dartmouth's Geisel School of Medicine. This gives readers trust in his point of view and understanding that he does have experience and knows a little bit about this topic more than just basic research. He frequently references the Netherlands, where euthanasia has been legal for decades. He provides a source to statistics from 2013, in which 4,800 Dutch people were euthanized, some without being terminally ill. The site did not exist when I clicked upon it, but I did further research to discover that these statistics were indeed true. Continuing with this article, the author claims the SB 128 bill, or End of Life Option Act in California, and any similar bills passed will lead to mass and unnecessary deaths in America. His evidence being what happened in the Netherlands. Basically, what he is stating is that America has a greater chance of becoming like the Netherlands and that people will choose to take this lethal medicine even if their lives are not completely dependent upon it. Meaning that even if they had something similar to chronic blindness and were still able to take medicine orally and they weren't in pain, they just choose to end their own lives. He also states that the purpose of SB 128 is to, quote, enable all competent adults to end their lives whenever they deem their physical quality of life is unacceptable, end quote. Basically stating that this bill simply, quotes, gives doctors legal authority to end patients' lives, end quote. In his final paragraphs, he expresses his belief that assisted suicide is a, quote, socially erosive response to basic human needs, end quote. He also states that even if these bills were to be passed, there should be amendments passed increasing curriculum on palliative care and pain management before licensing physicians, and they should be passed beforehand. The second article about this topic was My Aunt's Struggle with Physician-Assisted Suicide. This article was written from the author's personal experience in support of physician-assisted suicide and improving the laws so that it's easier to obtain lethal medicine to end your own life. The author, Linda Van Dant's aunt lost ability to swallow and move, and this led to her being diagnosed with a fatal disease. The author is a writer and entrepreneur, and all of the knowledge on this subject is based on personal research and experience. Unlike the other author, she's not completely qualified in this area of research. She tells the story of her aunt and experience with, quote, death by dignity, another term for physician-assisted suicide. She discusses this as a story from her diagnosis of a fatal disease to her suicide attempt to when the option for physician-assisted suicide appeared. She also references the act passed in California. As soon as the author's aunt heard of it, she made her decision to quote, go out on her own terms, end quote. A strict protocol made it so that the fatal drugs had to be given over a minimum 15-day waiting period, starting once a doctor confirmed her aunt was terminally ill and wanted to die. She spent the entire article discussing about how her aunt would grow slowly worse, just waiting for the confirmation. The California requirements are confirmed by Patrick McGreevy. I posted a link here which confirms all the requirements needed to obtain lethal medicine in California. Once all the deadlines were complete, the medicine itself posed a problem with the family. The time limit set to ensure the medicine worked put everyone in a panic and made it so that no one could properly say goodbye to her aunt. The author expresses her discomfort in several ways, including how the medicine was bitter and there was white powder all across her room. The author expresses her discontent with all the requirements and trouble to go through in accordance with this law. Quote, we had been forced to assist in the most bizarre fashion, jumping through seemingly random legal hoops and meeting arbitrary deadlines while my aunt suffered, and finally emptying capsules, making an elixir so vile I cried when I knew she had to drink it. This was death with dignity, end quote. I chose to compare the evidence in both articles. In Think Twice About Physician-Assisted Suicide, the author chose to use outside sources, which were valid and proving their points. They also had a title of authority, as they were a doctor and professor. And this knowledge pertaining to the subject and trustworthy personal experience made it easier to believe what he was saying. He also used the past world experience in Denmark, or the Netherlands, in order to predict the outcome of America. In my aunt's struggle with physician-assisted suicide, she used personal experience, which hands-on proves that there is some issues with this law. She discusses what this law is already like and how it could become better with some tweaks added to it. She also expresses her opinion based on her aunt's situation. She makes valid points of the complexity of this law and that her aunt had to suffer. The more persuasive article to me was, of course, Think Twice About Physician-Assisted Suicide by Ira Brock. Because he used outside sources and he was more qualified to discuss the topic than the other author. Using outside sources to back his opinions and to provide evidence helped more than the explanation through experience. Him also being qualified in the medical field adds validity and trust to his opinion and his data. While personal experience and explaining opinions based on experience offered a convincing argument in my aunt's struggle with physician-assisted suicide, hard evidence offered more of a convincing point of view in my opinion. I found myself able to read Think Twice About Physician-Assisted Suicide with greater ease than reading a story that didn't have very much evidence or sites linked to it. This is my bibliography. Thank you for listening to my presentation.